For most of my life, I've been a huge fan of Scooby-Doo. As I said, most of my life. While some versions of the Scooby Gang are better than others, for example, Mystery Incorporated is the absolute best, and I will cut a bitch if he dare disagree, the series most are familiar with is easily Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? Beginning in 1969, this is not only the original that started the franchise, but it also established the Scooby-Doo formula. Greedy villains using cosplay to frighten people away from their crimes. It gradually dawned on my daughter and me as we watched the same episodes over and over that despite the show's intended audience of children, occasionally the crimes being committed would transcend into adult territory, such as those involving assault and even attempted murder. And it's not just the villains breaking the law. Scooby, Shaggy, Fred, Daphne, and Velma aren't always in the clear, legally speaking. So I decided to review the original Scooby-Doo Where Are You series and count all the legal misdeeds, whether by the episode's villain or the Scooby Gang themselves. Given the franchise is almost half a century old, with over a dozen separate series and several dozen film and direct-to-video releases, I decided to limit the scope to just the first 2 seasons that aired from 1969 to 1970. I'm aware of the abridged 3rd season, and though the 9 episodes in question were originally classified as Where Are You?, they were later folded into the Scooby-Doo Show series designation. For this reason, and the fact that they aired almost a decade later, they won't be considered in my count. To keep things running smoothly, it was also decided to establish the following ground rules. Scooby-Doo gets treated as a human being because not only would being a dog absolve him from most crimes, if I included all the instances of animal cruelty or failure to control your pet to the list, this video would expand exponentially. Acts performed by any member of the Scooby Gang will usually count against the group as a whole, meaning a crime by one is a crime by all. This is because, as stated, they are a gang and would likely be treated as such by the authorities. Only obvious, generally recognizable criminal acts will be noted. Not every crime has the same legal definition or severity, so some mentioned here will likely differ throughout most of the country. Failure to report a crime will not be counted, not only because not every jurisdiction requires a third party to report criminal activities, but you can't be a meddling kid if you run to the cops first. Practicing detective work without a license will not be counted, because that's one of the core concepts of the Scooby-Doo franchise. The difference between trespassing and breaking and entering is whether or not a barrier like a door or window is involved. If the gang enters an abandoned amusement park, it's trespassing. If they climb through an open window at a closed museum, it's breaking and entering. All instances of entering onto property without the prior consent of the owner will be counted, regardless if permission is granted later. Stalking will not be counted. Even though technically the cosplaying criminal spends some part of every episode stalking the Scooby Gang, following someone menacingly without their knowledge doesn't really count. Legally speaking, criminal stalking usually involves violating restraining orders or otherwise harassing the victim with their full knowledge. Criminal intimidation varies from state to state, but generally means acting in a manner that induces fear in your victim intended to force them to, or not to do, something. In Scooby-Doo, this involves the villain trying to scare away the gang from whatever he's trying to hide. It will only be counted once per episode because theoretically, if prosecuted, all scare attempts would likely be lumped into a single charge. Attempted murder not only means obvious things like trying to blow up the gang using dynamite, it also includes intentionally creating situations that would most probably end in death. For example, trapping our heroes in a dangerous situation they wouldn't be able to escape with little to no chance of rescue, like sealing them in a flooded room with a limited supply of oxygen. Assault counts even if it's against the bad guy, whether it be knocking someone down or banging them up during a capture. Of course, while most attacks against the villain could be justified later as self-defense, that would be up to a judge to decide. While potentially confusing, the main difference between criminal confinement and kidnapping is whether or not the victim is moved to another location. So, keeping someone from leaving a house would be the former, while tying them up and taking them somewhere else would be the latter. For the purposes here, evidence tampering is usually counted when the Scooby Gang leaves a scene with a piece of evidence, while tampering with a crime scene is when they discover the villain's location and make significant changes to it, like building a trap, or otherwise contaminating the scene and possibly impeding the later work of proper investigators. Basically, anything a good defense attorney could use to get his client off the hook. Though occasionally discussed, continuity and other production errors won't be counted, like this one from Decoy for Dognapper. Even though known as driving the Mystery Machine, it won't be counted as reckless driving simply because an overworked camera operator at Hanna-Barbara wasn't paying attention. Remember, this is a layman's attempt at pointing out what laws regularly get broken in Scooby-Doo. I'm not a legal scholar, and some might disagree with many of the choices, but what would the internet be without pointless arguments over trivial matters? Let's begin.
Hey, what's this? It's a delivery label that says, "Deliver to the County Museum."
Come on, Scooby. We're leaving. You must have found him at the museum.
Man, I wonder what kind of groovy things you see with those.
Well, there's one way to find out.
Right. Watch me swing right in. Somebody sure is a messy housekeeper.
And look at that!
Zoinks! We did it, Scooby-Doo! We did it!
Just as we thought.
It's the curator, Mr. Wickles. Oh my gosh, Professor Hyde White!
We never found him.
It's Scooby-Doo with a shoe.
Probably.
Professor Hyde White!
Well, here it is, old Vasquez Castle.
Man, what a pad for a scare in. Oh, hi, Daphne.
I warned you to leave the island. Now you will pay.
Let's get out of here.
Well, if it isn't our old friend Bluestone the Great, an ex-magician that's wanted in 6 states.
first.
Well, come on. The door!
We're trapped. Like, get a load of those yachts.
Yeah, and they're being painted over in different colors.
I'm ready with the fire hose.
Okay, everybody?
I hope your contraption works. Scooby, are you all right?
Uh-huh.
Hey, look, Shaggy. A real old-time Western saloon.
Sarsaparilla, bartender. Woo!
Look, it's hollow.
Hey, what's this inside?
It looks like a map of Gold City.
Hey, I found some candles. Dynamite.
Those old floors look weak.
I know.
Look out!
Oh, I'm all right, just covered with flour.
I fell down in here.
Wouldn't you know it?
I'm the Holy Spirit.
Hey, look what I found. Like jars of chocolate syrup.
Chocolate syrup, nothing. That's samples of crude oil.
Shaggy's right. He is wearing stills.
So it was old Hank who was scaring off my guests.
To force you out of business.
That way, he could buy the guest ranch, the ghost town.
And like the mine for almost nothing.
Help! Help! Stop! Coming back here!
Wow, look at that truck smoke. Scooby, they got him.
As a decoy, you're a dud. Well, so long, Pooch. Enjoy the ride.
Geronimo! Run a roll! Stop the car! Stop the car!
Okay, it's solid.
Boy, I sure am glad to get away from those bats. And the ham slice connected to the rye bread. Lettuce connected to the boiled egg.
Scooby, untie me, quick. That witch doctor may come back at any time. And we haven't seen Sharon or her uncle either.
I think we found him. Only he looks a little older now.
Wow, I guess that ghost wasn't kidding.
Remember, this was a Saturday morning cartoon meant for children. Sure, maybe I was just a wee bit of a wuss as a child, but good God, that is a dead body. Well, it's supposed to be one anyway. And what the hell is up with that skull?
This is the last warning. Either the fortune is here by morning, or all those in the Weatherby house shall grow old.
Okay, Shaggy, use Velma's fingerprinting kit and dust for prints.
Right, Freddy? It looks like the Swami's out swammying somewhere else.
Then I guess he won't mind if we take a look around.
I want my palm red.
Yes, ma'am. You did say red.
Scooby caught the table.
Bombs away.
I guess that about wraps up the ghost story.
As soon as we clean him up, I'm sure you'll recognize him.
Uncle Stewart.
Like in person.
He thought he could scare you into giving up the family fortune.
Scooby-Doo, where are you? We need some help from you now. Come on,